So, good evening and welcome back. So, I decided to talk about taking in the good. And the reason that I chose this topic for tonight was because that so many people that I was speaking to were overwhelmed with all the negativity going on in the world, between the pandemic and trying to get the vaccination or not get the vaccination, and um, political strife, and here in the United States, attack of the Capitol, and all the division and divisiveness that's going on. um, a lot of bad news. Anybody notice that? A lot of bad news. It's been crazy. If someone told me a few years ago that this is what would be happening now, I would have been like, what? I don't think so. But it's all real, and it's really happening. Right. um, and a lot of people are feeling traumatized over the events of everything that have happened over the last few years. And I've heard that suicides are up. There's a lot more suicides are really going up. And I know that at the addiction recovery center that I've work at, a lot of ODing happening because people are not doing well with. There's a lot of anxiety, and depression is going up as well. So taking in the good, how does that fit in here? We need some good. There's a lot of bad. Um, but I'm not going to be talking about taking in the good as a way to bypass all the negativity that's going on, but really taking in the good to bring more balance to the state of mind. A little bit of, because the our mind is like a weather pattern. Sometimes we have raging storms that are really tumultuous and dark and heavy, and then other times the sun comes out and evaporates all the rain, and the um, clearness, and the wispy clouds, and different things happen. So the weather's constantly changing, and if it's all sun without ever any rain or problems, then we're going to end up being a desert, right? And then if it's all rain and stormy, then we're going to end up with floods and become the Noah's Ark again, you know. So there's a certain balance to the state of mind. If we were the sky, we need balance. Um, we can't have all one or the other. So I'll be one of the suttas that the Buddha gave was the Sona Sutta. And Sona was one of the Buddha's students. And Sona really wanted to become enlightened. And Sona was very energetically uh, in solitude, struggling with this practice. And he was meditating day in and day out, except for during the time that he was eating. Um, and Sona came from a very wealthy family originally. And he was a musician in his family. He played the lute. So he went to the Buddha, and he went to the Buddha for advice several times, and the Buddha was giving advice on how to practice. And finally he came to the Buddha, and the Buddha said to him, Sona, in the past when you lived at home, weren't you skilled at the lute? Yes, Bhante, he said. He said, well, what do you think, Sona, when the strings of your lute were too tight, was your lute well tuned and easy to play? No, Sona said. And he said, well, what if your strings were too loose? Were the strings well tuned and easy to play? And Sona said, no. So if the strings were too light or too loose, then I couldn't tune it and it wouldn't play well. And the Buddha said, well, so too, Sona, if energy is aroused too forcefully, so if you're trying too hard, if there's a lot of striving, then that leads to restlessness. Likewise, or opposite, if energy is too lax, this leads to laziness. So you won't have a clear head. Therefore, Sona, resolve to balance your energy, achieve evenness of spiritual faculties, and take up your object there in this balanced place. right? Um, and what the Buddha was talking to was right effort. Right or wise effort is an important part of our meditation practice. In fact, it's the um, sixth of the eightfold path, the sixth factor of the Eightfold Path, wise effort, right effort. And it includes energy, which is viriya. And energy and effort are mental factors that can appear as either wholesome or unwholesome. They can lead us more to the stormy weather or more to the sunny weather, so to speak, too tight or too loose. So the same factor of energy can fuel violence, anger, confusion, hurt, worry, sadness, or it can fuel generosity, kindness, compassion, patience, wisdom, right? So our exertion in our practice, we want to have a right or wise exertion. To put this right effort is about putting energy towards wholesome mental states, wholesome mental faculties that we're cultivating, right? Because these faculties, these wholesome states will help us become free, free from suffering. And that is the byproduct of this practice. When we're doing mindfulness properly, right effort, we're putting energy into our practice. There are 4 wise efforts. The first 2 are about how to work with unwholesome things, right? To overcome unwholesome things that have not arisen yet, over to or to avoid things unwholesome that have not arisen yet, to work with unwholesome factors that are present. Those are the first 2. But the second 2 right efforts are cultivating wholesome mental states, right? Cultivating wholesome mental states. The first one is cultivating wholesome mental states that have not yet arisen. So what does that mean? Creating the environment, the weather pattern for the conditions of wholesome states to arise. And the fourth one is strengthening and perfecting wholesome states that are present, right? I really love this wise effort. Yeah, so how do we do that? Our focus often in Buddhism is about suffering. Oh, I'm suffering, working with suffering. How can I be with my suffering? How can I be with my pain? How can I be with my confusion? How can I be with my frustration with conservatives or with liberals or with whatever? Um, yeah. So anyhow, we'll talk more about it in our discussion. But cultivating the wholesome things that have not yet arisen, right? Perhaps surrounding yourself with wise people, doing things that bring joy, meditating. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But you probably have heard of Rick Hanson, the neuropsychologist, who is really into developing wholesome states of mind. He's done a lot of research on how to develop wholesome states of mind. One of the things that he's talked about, I saw him in person, was that originally the psychologists used to think that we all have a default network resting state of happiness that is conditioned by our genetics and our family community conditioning, and that we have a certain happiness set point and we're stuck with it for the rest of our lives. That's what they used to think, right? Yeah, but that what they're finding out now is we're not stuck with this um, happiness set point. The happiness set point, like if you're at a 4 normally, resting 4, if someone that what they found out, the reason why they thought it didn't change is someone who would win the lottery, millions of dollars, and they get really happy for a short period of time. And then after a year or two, they come back to their 4, right? Their original level. But if people have gone through a lot of negative losses and difficult experiences, they can actually lower their happiness set point. Um, yeah. So, but now, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we can actually change that um, happiness set point. We can increase it through our practice. In fact, that's what Rick Hansen, the neuropsychologist, was finding out. But the reason he brings up why his whole practice and all of his teachings are about increasing our happiness set point is because our default network is to have a negativity bias, the human brain. We're prone to focus on the negative, to detect negative things before positive things, to dwell on them, and to also remember them, more so than the positive or the pleasant. So bad information carries a lot more weight than good information. That's why we have, when we watch the news, it's mostly bad because they're trying to get good ratings. That's why I think, on it personally, I wish that all news was nonprofit. Yeah, because they're trying to get our attention, and so it's much more negative. Anyhow, a lot of you probably know my stories. I saw this negativity bias really strongly in my practice, how my mind was searching for negative things to chew on and dwell on. It's like it was hungry, like a desert looking for water. I was like, wow, look at this brain. It wants negative things to chew on. So once I saw that, I was like, well, why is this? With mindfulness, I saw that clearly. So then I chose to intentionally start looking for positive and pleasant experiences because I could feel that my head was off balance. It was always like this instead of like this, you know? Yeah. Here's a quote by Nichiren Daishonin. If one lights a fire for others, one will brighten one's own way. If one lights a fire for others, one will brighten one's own way. Well, it turns out that we can increase our happiness set point by being nice to others. Doing nice things for others regularly increases our happiness set point. So the nicer people are happier people. The more generous a person is, the happier they are. And isn't that interesting? Because the Buddha taught his students, his teachers, to teach generosity before anything else. Generosity was the very first teaching that a lay person got because it increases your happiness, right? In Buddhism, they also teach sympathetic joy or altruistic joy. That's what we did at the end of our practice today. And this increases our happiness set point too. And we can take in the good by practicing being happy for other people's good fortunes and our own good fortunes. And what we could also do is, if we've had good fortunes, generously share our good fortunes with others by telling them, celebrating with others, people that are going to be happy for us. What they're finding is that when we share in our happiness, happiness grows. It doesn't get diminished. It grows. So this taking in the good, I think it's really important right now, since there is so much negativity going on in our world. There's a lot of challenging things. So we have to be able to sense when we're off kilter and choose to take in more of the good, right? But our long-term happiness or unhappiness is really dependent on our internal landscape. It's an internal job. It's not an external job. Like we can't go to, a happiness doctor and say, okay, give me the pill, make me happy. Right? It's something that we have to do ourselves internally. So we have to do what the Buddha taught was wise effort, create the environment for happiness to arise by taking in the good. Rick Hansen has found that he teaches a lot of taking in the good. He has programs that he teaches. You can sign up for one of his programs with daily meditations and his talks and teachings. And his taking in the good reduces anxiety and agitation and increases people's sense of contentment just by wiring themselves to take in the good. Because we're already wired for the negativity, right? We're already lopsided. We really need to get this. Most people are already lopsided on the negative side. So we have to intentionally choose to take in the good on a regular basis. Because the mind is naturally going to walk into a room and look for what's wrong in our environment. Okay? We have to see that clearly. It's great for survival, but not for being happy, not for having a good life. Yeah. And today, with our social media and news everywhere, we can listen to any country. We can listen to their news just about online. We're bombarded with every negative thing happening, not only in our own community, but everyone else's community and across the world. So in a way, ignorance really is bliss at times because it's just too much. It's too much negative information. No wonder we're struggling. When we take in way too much negative information and not enough of the good, we're going to feel perpetually anxious and unsafe. I'll never forget, my mother was, when she first started getting into the internet, she was reading all these posts and scary emails she was getting from all her other friends. And she called me and she said, next time you get gas, and from now on, make sure that you check the gas pump before you pump, because they're putting needles infected with HIV on the gas pumps. And also, people will hide underneath your car and jump out and grab you and attack you. So she was telling me all the ways that I'm going to get attacked next time I get I get gas, and how we have to be extra careful each time. And I said, well, thank you, Mom, but chances are things are not going to happen. Oh, no, it happened in Montana or wherever. One time out of the millions of times people get gas, it happened, but it's going to happen to me now and my sister. Yeah. So I think it's wise to know the dangers and to educate ourselves and take these measures to be safe. But focusing too much energy on all of these potential things that can go wrong are very troubling and agitating to the mind. And it's no wonder that most people catastrophize, right? I remember growing up as a little girl, my grandmother, my mother's mother, I think she came by it honestly. We lived in Michigan, and every time there was a tornado, we'd go down the basement, and my grandmother would sit there crying and rocking, going, oh, 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 and I'd be looking at her like, should I be scared now? Are we all gonna die? But how many tornadoes did we sit in the basement for that we didn't? I'm still here. The tornado didn't hit us. But most people, because of this negativity bias, will will imagine the worst possible scenario when they're going to a situation. And the news definitely does that as well. It portrays the worst possible aspects of everything. Um, so we want to take in the good in order to balance all of this out. It might be helpful to, if you're feeling really agitated and hopeless or angry a lot at what's happening in the world, you might want to cut down on the stream of negative information coming in. Not to say I don't care and I don't want to know what's going on, but maybe not watch the news for 2 hours a day or whatever. Maybe cut out one of the podcasts, or I'm not sure. So I lead retreats, meditation retreats, and during the retreats, people are asked to not watch any news, to cut out all social media, and just be with their meditation practice. And consistently, people say, "Oh my gosh, I really love not having any news. Um, my mind feels so much better." So, yeah, play around with that. Find out how much is too much, how much is enough. We want to be engaged in the world, but not overwhelmed, right? Um, so when I'm saying taking in the good, I'm not saying to become this make believe Pollyanna, everything's great kind of person, because negativity happens, challenges happen. The Taoists talked about the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. This is life, right? And we want to practice seeing it all clearly with keen investigation, the Vichaya, keen investigation, see it all clearly with our mindfulness practice. When we don't see things clearly, we're muddle-headed. That's what the Buddha called it, muddle-headed. And when we're muddle-headed, we don't see things clearly. We don't see our part. We don't see other people's parts. And we're doomed to keep repeating history over and over and over again. So mindfulness is the key to our practice, and taking in the good. It's our key to our practice to working through difficult experiences. I'm not saying to avoid working with difficult experiences. They're here. We have to deal with them. We have to bring compassionate, loving attention to our challenges with mindfulness. But mindfulness plus the intention to take in the good, to look for pleasant sensations, look for pleasant experiences, is a really important part of our practice every day. Have that intention. To look for things, not to avoid the negative. So you want to see the negative, but see the wholesome and positive too, and bring more attention and energy to the wholesomeness. Maybe do things in your day that will bring wholesome states of mind. I know for me, the bird song, and I've heard other people say, I love to listen to bird song. So I'll go sit on my back porch or sit outside and just listen to birds. And I don't know why, but they sound happy. Anyhow, so that brings in taking in the good. I went for a walk today. It was a beautiful day here, and practiced gratitude for the wind and the sun and my health and ability to be able to get some good exercise. So gratitude practice. Some of you, anybody here have a gratitude practice? Show of hands. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Looking for things to feel grateful for. And you can always describe your gratitude practice to us during the discussion if you choose to. But at first, it's going to take effort to look for the wholesome and look for the things to be grateful for. You have to remind yourself, oh, that's right, I'm looking for something to feel grateful for. Because the mind is, remember, it's over here. You got to bring it over here to see what you're grateful for from time to time. So yeah, another thing that helps increase the happiness set point besides generosity, gratitude, taking in the good, along with the intention and mindfulness, is having a purpose, meaningful purpose. And that's kind of woven in with all of that. So, like, what is your highest aspiration? Are you here to bring more joy to the world, more wisdom, more love, more beauty? Do you have a purpose that can help you take in the good as well? And it's a practice, taking in the good. And the mindfulness, we're constantly checking to see, okay, it's been pretty heavy the past few days. I think I need to take in some good. Maybe watch a Disney movie instead of a crime drama, or read some poetry, or listen to some music that feels enlivening. I know I have my two new cats, um, and I think the previous owner was not as boisterous as I am. Because when I first turned on some good, to me, good dance music, and started dancing around, they were both like going off to the corner, like, what's going on, staring at each other. And I'm just dancing, going, hey, jumping around. And they're like, oh. So now every time I turn on the dance music and start dancing around, they get excited and they start playing with each other. And then we're all like jumping and dancing around. It's a lot of fun. Here's a poem by Sarah Teasdale. It's called Barter. Life has loveliness to sell, all beautiful and splendid things. Blue waves whitened on a cliff, soaring fire that sways and sings, and children's faces looking up, holding water like a cup. Life has loveliness to sell, music like a curve of gold, scent of pine trees in the rain. Eye that loves you, arms that hold, and for your spirit's still delight, holy thoughts that star the night. Spend all you have for loveliness, buy it and never count the cost. For one white singing hour of peace, count many a year of strife well lost. And for a breath of ecstasy, give all you have been or could be. So thank you for your listening and your kindness. And we'll bring it to a discussion. So during the discussion,